He said I would inherit the business. So I skipped college and gave him 10 years of my life. But in the end, he gave it to someone else. You won't believe who. It is still hard to say that out loud without wanting to punch a wall. 10 years. Over 3,000 days. Countless nights where I locked up after midnight, only to be back before sunrise. All of it, I thought, was leading to something. A future. A legacy. My dad's legacy. Our family's business. What I thought would be mine one day. His name is Gerald Kane. He started a custom cabinetry shop back in the 90s when I was still a kid riding a scooter through the sawdust in the back lot. He built it from nothing, literally worked out of a garage until he saved enough for a warehouse on the edge of town. I was proud of what he created. I believed in it. That is why I never complained when he asked me to come work full-time after high school instead of going to college. He said, "This will be yours someday, Jason. What is the point of chasing degrees when you have a business right here?" So I said yes. I figured I would learn everything from the inside out: production, books, inventory, customer service. There were no titles, just responsibilities, and I took on every one of them. Payroll? I learned it. Fixing busted machines? Did that too. Hell, I even built the website myself one winter when we were slow. And I kept thinking, just a few more years and he will make it official. The raise thing? That came up around year 10. My wife and I were expecting our second kid. Our oldest was starting kindergarten. Money was tight. I had not asked for anything for years, not even when gas hit $4 a gallon, and I was driving that rust bucket pickup back and forth to job sites every day. But this time, I thought it was fair. Just a small bump. Not even market rate for the hours I put in. I just needed to breathe a little easier. I remember walking into the office, hands slightly shaking, thinking, this is reasonable. This is earned. But Dad just stared at me over those ugly wire-rimmed glasses he had worn since the Bush era. Said something like, "Now is not the time, son. You should be grateful. You already have everything you need." Everything I need? I was living in a 2-bedroom rental with black mold in the bathroom. My wife worked night shifts at the hospital. We skipped dinners out. I sold my guitar to cover the hospital bill from when our daughter had that fever scare. But sure, I had everything I needed. I swallowed it. I nodded. I walked out. I told myself, he is just old school. Maybe he is waiting for the right moment. The right moment came 2 weeks later. But not for me. It came in the form of a family barbecue. Everyone was there: my mom, my sister Amber, her boyfriend Josh, some cousins, neighbors. Burgers, cheap beer, laughter. And then, right there in front of everyone, he stood up, clinked his stupid plastic cup with a spoon, and said, "I am proud to announce that Amber will be taking over Kane Custom Cabinets next year." I felt the blood drain from my face. My legs turned to stone. He just smiled and kept talking, like it was some kind of promotion announcement at a company picnic. My sister beamed like she had just won a lottery she did not even buy a ticket for. I could not speak, could not move. I had given this man 10 years of my life, and he gave it to someone who had never lifted a damn finger in that shop. What made him choose her? That question burned hotter than anything else, and I was about to find out the answer was uglier than I could have imagined. Amber was always the golden one. If you looked at us side by side growing up, you would not have guessed it. I was the one who followed the rules, got decent grades, stayed out of trouble. Amber was wild from the start, never grounded because our parents thought she was just expressive. She crashed her first car 6 months after getting her license. Guess who paid to replace it? Not her. Not even a loan or a guilt trip. Just about on the hood of a brand new Camry 2 weeks later. It was like she could do no wrong. And I was the steady one. The background son. The safe bet they never bet on. So when Dad announced she would take over the business, it was not just a shock. It was confirmation. Confirmation that no matter how many years I gave, how much I sacrificed, I was never the one he saw as worthy. Amber had worked in the office for maybe 3 months. Total. She used to joke that the machines were too loud and the guys in the shop smelled like old wood and sweat. She said she was not cut out for blue-collar work. But Dad always said she had vision. Whatever the hell that meant. Her version of vision was posting poorly lit photos on the company's Instagram and talking about turning the shop into a boutique-build experience. What she had was charm. That easy smile, that persuasive tone. People liked her, even when she had nothing to say. Especially Dad. That night, after the barbecue, I stayed behind to help clean up, like always. Took the trash out, packed the cooler, stacked the chairs. Mom gave me this look like she wanted to say something, but she just handed me a bag of leftovers and said, "You okay?" I nodded. But inside, I was unraveling. When I got home, my wife saw it on my face. I told her what happened. She did not say a word, just pulled me into a hug and let me stand there like a man made of stone. That was the moment I started asking myself the question I had always been afraid to ask. What if I was never going to get the thing I had been working for? What if all this time, I had been chasing an inheritance that was never meant for me? And then something happened the next morning. I walked into the office, my usual spot behind the front desk, going over invoices. And there it was, a new plaque on the wall. Amber Kane, VP of Strategy. I stared at it for a long time. Then I looked at the calendar. That meeting I had asked for 2 weeks ago, the one where I brought up the raise? It had been the tipping point. Not because I was wrong to ask, but because it gave them the excuse to do what they had already decided. They were never going to give it to me. But why her? Why now? I had my suspicions, but nothing could have prepared me for what I was about to uncover. I should have walked away that day. Should have taken my keys, my pride, and the little dignity I had left, and just left. But I did not. Because part of me still believed there had to be a reason. Something deeper. Some kind of explanation that would make it make sense. A part of me still wanted to believe my dad was not just some cold-hearted bastard playing favorites. That part of me was about to get crushed. A few days later, I stopped by Mom's house to fix a busted faucet. She had called, said Dad was out running errands. I figured maybe that was a good thing. Less tension, less pretending everything was fine. She handed me a box of tools and made small talk while I worked. But then she slipped. Said something she probably did not mean to. She said, "You know how hard it was for him, keeping the peace between you and your sister." I froze. The wrench slipped in my hand. Keeping the peace? What peace? There was never a war. Just me, working. And her, being gifted things. I asked her what she meant. She hesitated. Then, like she had been waiting years to unburden herself, she told me everything. Apparently, Amber had been threatening to move across the country. Said she was done being ignored. That she was tired of me being the one everyone counted on. Claimed she would cut ties with the family completely if she was not taken seriously. And she had Dad wrapped around her finger, like always. Mom admitted they had been in talks for months. About how to keep Amber close. About how Dad had promised her a role in the business, just to avoid losing her entirely. So, it was not about merit, I said, still gripping the wrench like it was the only thing holding me upright. It was about managing her feelings. Mom looked away. That was the truth. Plain and rotten. I was never the future. I was just the buffer. The placeholder. The peacekeeper while they figured out how to coddle her back into the fold. She had dangled the threat of leaving, and he panicked. She had not earned a damn thing. But he gave it to her anyway. And I was the sucker who kept the machine running while they handed her the keys. That was the day something in me cracked. And once it cracked, there was no putting it back together. After I left my parents' house that day, I sat in my truck for over an hour. Did not start the engine. Did not touch my phone. Just stared at the cracked windshield and let it all settle in. They were never planning to pass it to me. They just used me to keep the shop afloat until Amber decided whether or not she wanted to play boss. And I let them. That was the worst part. I let it happen. Over the next week, I went through the motions. Showed up on time. Took calls. Managed orders. I even helped Amber when she struggled with the software I had been using for 5 years. She could not remember the login password. Asked me 3 times how to update a quote. And she kept calling the CNC machine that cutting thing. But I kept quiet. Because I was planning something. It started small, collecting every file, every spreadsheet, every set of instructions I had created from scratch. I had written policies, built client relationships, and maintained the books for years. None of that was officially documented anywhere except in the systems I had set up. They were not company files. They were my files. And if I was going to walk away, I was not leaving empty-handed. Then came the final straw. Amber scheduled a leadership transition meeting. Sent me a calendar invite with a smiley face in the subject line. Said we should talk about how my role would be evolving in the months ahead. Her exact words, "We want to leverage your expertise in more of a background support capacity." I stared at that email for 5 minutes before I laughed. The kind of laugh that feels like choking on your own breath. They wanted me to step aside quietly, keep doing the heavy lifting, and fade into the background like a good little soldier. That meeting? I showed up. Sat across from Amber and Dad in the conference room I helped renovate. Listened as they talked about modernizing the company, shifting to a more visionary brand, and reimagining roles. And when Amber turned to me and said, "You'll still be an important part of this family," I snapped. I stood up, calmly, took off my work shirt and left it folded on the table. Then I looked at Dad and said, "You built this with your hands. I kept it alive with mine. But I am done building for people who do not value the work." Amber laughed awkwardly. Dad said nothing. I walked out. No yelling, no threats, no scene. Just a quiet, final goodbye to the business I had given everything to. But walking away was not the end. It was just the start of something bigger, something they never saw coming. The next morning, I woke up before the sun, just like always. But this time, I had nowhere to be. No shop to open. No orders to fill. No machines humming in the background like a second heartbeat. It felt like losing a limb. But after the silence wore off, I realized I still had something they could never take. I had the skills. So I drove out to the old storage unit I had been renting for years, the one where I kept scraps of wood from past projects, spare tools, and a half-finished workbench I never had time to complete. It smelled like dust and oil. And freedom. I rolled up the door, stepped inside, and got to work. There was no plan at first. Just movement. Cutting. Shaping. Sketching ideas in a notebook. I posted a few pieces on a local marketplace app, custom shelving, rustic tables, reclaimed wood countertops. A few small jobs rolled in. Then more. Within 2 months, I had 3 full kitchen builds lined up, word of mouth from a client whose wife loved the way I refinished their island. Every night, I crashed hard. Every morning, I woke up hungry. It felt good again. Pure. And that was when I got the call. Not from Dad. Not from Amber. From one of our biggest suppliers. "Hey, Jason. Just wondering what's going on over at Kane Custom. Tried following up on a backorder. Amber said it was handled, but it ain't." I kept my voice even. Asked for details. Turns out 2 orders were shipped wrong, 1 account was suspended for non-payment, and nobody had been responding to emails for over a week. I told him I was not with Kane anymore. He went quiet. Then he said, "Well, that's a shame. You were the one who kept things moving over there." We hung up, and I just sat there. That was the first time it really hit me, not just emotionally, but practically. The whole operation had been running on my back. Without me, it was not just going to slow down. It was going to collapse. And part of me wanted to watch it burn. But another part? That part had a much better idea. I never planned revenge. Not at first. But when opportunity shows up on your doorstep wearing a name tag that says justice, you do not turn it away. The first real shift came from an unexpected place, a client named Rick Marshall. He owned a real estate staging company and had been one of Kane Custom's regulars. We had worked together plenty of times, and he always appreciated my attention to detail. I had not reached out to him since I left. Figured he was still loyal to the company name. But then he emailed me. "Hey, Jason. Heard you're out on your own. You available to quote a job?" I almost dropped my coffee. Turns out word had started to spread. The good kind. Not gossip, not drama, just facts. Jason is no longer at Kane. Jason is doing custom work. Jason delivers. I took the job. Then another. And another. It was not just about the money, though that part helped. I finally replaced my rusted-out truck and got a proper dust collection system for the shop. What really got to me was the way clients talked about what had happened. A few of them mentioned the chaos at Kane. Missed deadlines. Weird invoices. One woman said Amber quoted her for floating shelves and sent a kitchen island. But the most satisfying part? They all came to me after trying to stay with Kane. It was not bitterness that brought them my way, it was competence. Amber had the title, the building, the name. I had the skill. So I leaned in. Started an Instagram page with clean shots of my work. Posted stories of the builds, no drama, just process. Let the work speak louder than any feud ever could. Then I did something even riskier. I emailed Dad. Just one line. "I hope the shop is holding up." He replied 6 hours later. "Amber is doing her best. It is an adjustment." I could read between the lines. The walls were already cracking. And behind one of those cracks, I was about to find something that would change everything. I never meant to look for dirt. I just wanted closure. But when I bumped into Frank, the old bookkeeper who had retired last year, at a hardware store, I got more than that. He asked how things were going. I gave him the short version. Said I was doing my own thing now. Then he lowered his voice and said something that made the hairs on my neck stand up. "Gerald should have never touched those accounts. You kept him honest. Without you there, well, let's just say things are messier than they look." I did not press him. Not then. just nodded and let the conversation drift. But that night, I could not sleep. My mind kept turning that over. Touch the accounts? What did that mean? I still had access to one of the old backup drives I had taken when I left. Not out of spite, just habit. It had years of invoices, payroll history, spreadsheets I had built to keep track of things because Dad always said QuickBooks felt too corporate. I pulled it out. Started digging. That is when I saw it. A folder with Amber's name on it. Buried deep. Inside, a PDF of a personal loan agreement, drawn from the business account, signed by Dad, marked confidential. The amount? $28,000. Date? 2 weeks before the barbecue where he announced she would take over the business. Another file, a budget for a home renovation. Amber's condo, itemized down to the light fixtures. Paid for entirely through King Custom. Labeled as client engagement staging upgrades. My jaw clenched. This was not just favoritism. It was theft. Dressed up in paperwork and excuses. She had not just taken my future. She had taken funds meant for the business I helped build. And Dad? He had signed off on all of it. He had lied to my face while handing her the world behind my back. The question now was not if I would act. It was how far I was willing to go. I stared at that folder for a long time. Part of me wanted to drag it into the trash bin and forget it. Walk away. Let them sink under the weight of their own mess. But the other part, the part that had spent a decade swallowing pride and patching drywall with bloody knuckles, could not let it slide. It was not just about me anymore. It was about every supplier we owed. Every worker who stayed loyal to that shop because I told them it was worth it. Because they believed me when I said the family business had integrity. And now I had proof that it was being gutted from the inside. So I made a decision. No fire. No scandal. Just quiet accountability. I printed copies of everything. Highlighted the discrepancies. Labeled the source folders. Created a clear timeline. Then I mailed one envelope anonymously to the IRS. Another to the state tax board. And a third? To Mark Elder, our biggest commercial client, the one who had already called me twice about Kane's delays. I did not write a cover letter. Just sent the facts. Then I waited. 1 week went by. Then 2. I kept building my own shop. Started taking on apprentices. Even had a few former Kane workers reach out, asking if I needed help. I told them yes. Paid them better. Treated them with respect. Then, in the middle of a job site, I got the call. It was from Eddie, one of the crew leads still working over at Kane. "You hear what happened?" he asked. "No," I said, even though I had a pretty good guess. IRS showed up yesterday. Amber was crying in the office. Gerald looked like someone punched him in the throat. Whole place is locked down for internal audit. I leaned against the back of the delivery van and let out a long breath. It was not joy I felt. Not victory. It was relief. For the first time in 10 years, I was not the one cleaning up their mess. They were finally being held accountable for their own damn choices. But just when I thought it was over, Dad showed up on my doorstep. It was a Saturday morning when he came. I was in the garage, sanding down a maple slab for a custom dining table. Music low. Dust in the air. Peaceful. Then I heard tires crunching on gravel and saw that old silver F-150 pull up out front. He stepped out slowly, like his boots weighed 50 pounds each. Gerald Kane. My father. He walked up to the edge of the garage, hands in his jacket pockets, eyes fixed on the ground like he was rehearsing something. I did not say a word. Just kept sanding. Let the hum of the machine fill the air between us. After a long silence, he finally spoke. "They came for the records." I nodded, not even looking up. "We got a letter from the tax board, too. Said there were inconsistencies in vendor payments and company reimbursements. They're digging deep." More silence. Then, "You did it, didn't you?" I turned off the sander and wiped my hands on a rag. I met his eyes for the first time in months. He looked older. Smaller. "Wasn't me," I said. "It was the truth. That's what showed up." He looked away. Shuffled his boots a little. "You could have come to me first," he muttered. I laughed, short and bitter. "Like when I came to you for a raise and you handed the company to Amber instead?" He flinched, barely. "But I saw it. I was trying to keep the family together," he said. "No. You were trying to keep Amber from leaving. You used me to build something stable, then handed it to someone who never earned it." I stepped closer, close enough that the dust on my shirt was probably getting on his fancy jacket. "I spent 10 years giving you my time, my health, my loyalty. You gave her the keys because she whined louder." He looked down again. Said nothing. I took a breath. Let it all settle. "I'm not angry anymore. I said, and I meant it. Not because I forgive you, but because I finally built something that's mine. He nodded once. You've done good work. Everyone's saying it. Another silence. Then he turned and walked back to the truck. No hug. No apology. Just a man who finally saw the storm he had created. And for once, I let him go without trying to fix it. That was the last time I saw him. But one final surprise was still waiting, and it came from the last person I expected. 2 weeks passed. No more calls. No more visits. The IRS kept doing their thing. Amber deleted her social media. Clients started reaching out to me directly. It felt like a door had finally closed, and not just on the business, but on a part of myself I had been dragging behind me like a dead weight. Then, on a rainy Thursday, a letter showed up in the mail. Handwritten. No return address. I opened it slowly. Inside was a folded piece of lined paper and a check. The letter was from Amber. Jason, I do not expect you to read this. But if you are, I need you to know something I was too ashamed to say face to face. I did not ask for the business because I wanted it. I asked for it because I was afraid of what I would be without it. Dad kept telling me I was meant for more. That I needed something to anchor me. I think deep down he was scared of losing both of us. I was never qualified. You were. I knew it. So did he. But once it was given to me, I felt trapped, like if I failed, I'd prove everyone right. And I did fail. Spectacularly. The check won't make things right. But it's a start. It's from my personal savings. Not the business. Not Dad. Just me. I hope your new shop is thriving. You earned every ounce of it. Amber. I stared at that check. It was made out for $5,000. Not enough to erase what happened, but maybe enough to say she had finally seen the truth. I never cashed it. I pinned it to the corkboard in my office, right next to a photo of my kids standing in front of my shop's new sign, Kane and Sons Woodworks. Yeah, I kept the name. Not for Dad. Not for the legacy. But because someday, I want my own kids to know that work means something. That when you build something with your hands, no one can take that from you, not even family. I may never get an apology from my father. And I'm okay with that. Because I got something better. A business of my own. A team that respects me. A family I show up for every day. And peace. Real peace. Not the kind you fake to keep someone happy. The kind you earn when you finally stop living in someone else's shadow and step fully into your own light. Thanks for listening. Drop a comment. Hit subscribe. More stories are coming.